This is a video on how to solve this particular trig limit problem. Remember, we have this in our minds already, the limit of, as x approaches 0, of sine x over x, correct? That is equal to 1. So we already know that. Now, if we notice that there's a sine function here, and here I have x approaching 1, not 0, and here I have x minus 1 on a denominator. Let's do a little t substitution and see if we can get something from this. So let's just say t equals x minus 1, okay? Now if we did that, then we know that x, right, would equal to t plus 1. That makes sense. So let's go back and substitute in here and see if we could learn something. So we would rewrite this as the limit of what? As t approaches 0, correct? Okay, because as x approaches 1, t is going to approach 0. Of my function, and we're going to write it as sine of pi times t plus 1. Remember, this is really all in the argument, okay, over t. Well, if we notice here that we could multiply this argument out, and we could have the sine of pi t plus pi. We also know that this is some identity for sine, and we know that the sine of a plus b is equal to the sine of a, let me just write it here, sine a cosine of b plus cosine of a sine of b. Well, so what we're going to do is we're going to apply that here. So this expression right here is equivalent to the sine of pi t times the cosine of pi plus the cosine of pi t times the sine of pi. Now let's study that for a moment. We know that cosine of pi is negative 1, so this just be negative sine of pi t. And we know also that the sine of pi is 0, so this part just is plus 0. So if we could return to our problem here. Now we have the limit as t approaches 0 of negative sine pi t over t. Now this is pretty close to what we're looking for, right, over here. It's close, but it's not exact. What we would like to do is get rid of this minus sign, and we're going to need pi t at the bottom. So if I put a pi here, I'll have to put a pi out here, because pi over pi, and not only do you get full, but it's 1, okay? And also have a minus sign here, so if I change that to a plus, I'd have to put a negative sign out here in the front. So let's rewrite that. I have negative pi times the limit as t approaches 0 of the sine of pi t over pi t. Now this, in essence, is very, very close to what we're looking for over here. So we're going to have, that's negative pi times 1, which is negative pi, or negative 3.14. Okay, let's see how to do that. Let's see if that makes sense. Okay, so if you notice here, I have the equation in my equation editor, and I'm going to graph it. Now remember, the question was, what's going to happen where x is 1? If I trace at 1, I have no value for y because it's not defined. How about 1.1? Okay, and here you go. And how about 0.99? And if you notice here, the y value is close to negative pi. So there is a limit at that location. So that's something to keep in mind. when you're doing a problem like this. I hope this helped.